All right, good old Bob Seger, old time rock and roll. How come we don't have more music nowadays with saxophones and trumpets and stuff, man? What happened to that? What happened to the old big band era? It had like a whole orchestra behind it, man. That was so cool. I remember I had Donnie Most. Donnie Most was Ralph Mouth from Happy Days. I had him on as a guest. I'll replay it this week. He was a nice guy. And that's what he's doing now. He does like a big band thing, and he goes on the road and does his big band music, like Frank Sinatra music. Great stuff, man. I don't know. Well, you know what? Well, you got to play this. This is a rap, whatever that stuff, that mumble rap they talk. Anyway, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Opperman Report. That's the name of the show. The name of your host is Ed Opperman. You could find me. I'm a private investigator. You could find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. If you reach out to me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Now, when you hear that, right, so listen to the name of the company. By the way, I'm starting another company too, doing with another little project I'm working on now that I was renewed energy. I'm born again for as far as on this earth. Opperman Investigations. So I'll investigate things for you. And Digital Forensic Consulting, which means if you have a question for me about digital forensics, okay, it means that is my employment. That's what I bill for that time. I charge you. So all these quick questions that people have for me about digital forensics, so that's what I do for a living. Okay, so expect to compensate me for that time and that expertise, okay, which goes way back. It goes back to the beginning of cell phone forensics. I was talking to a guest this week, a very good guest, and he was talking about Celebrite, digital forensics software, and he was so impressed with it. I remember when Celebrite cost $1,000, and it was just like a data dump, and it wasn't even considered like viable to be used in court. That's how far back I go in this expertise, my friends. But welcome to the show. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and don't forget our Patreon. If you like this show here, check out our Patreon. Got a lot of cool stuff up there on Patreon. Let's take a look. Okay, the John Tino story. We have an old interview up there with Monique Alfifazi. The book is called All the President's Women, Donald Trump and the Making of a Predator. Her co-author was a fellow named Levine. I forget his first name. And they're the first people, I think they're the first or the only people out there to talk about the John Tino story, which is a very interesting story. John Tino is a nom de plume. Phony name, AKA, but he ran massage parlors and porn theaters in Times Square back in the 70s, and one of his clients, according to John Tino, was Mr. Donald Trump. And he used to hook up Trump with porn stars and such like that for encounters. And on one occasion, he says, and Trump wanted a threesome, and he was provided an underage teenager. Now, the John Tino story, try and Google it. Try and look for it. You're not going to find it anywhere else but on the Opperman Report. But it's in this book. It's in a book, All the President's Women, Donald Trump and the Making of a Predator. Which means that the publishers had to run it by fact checkers, so they had to have enough there, okay, to publish this book. Otherwise, they say, hey, there's not enough there. We don't want to publish the book. Now, the two authors there, they've come to me on other occasions to vet out information and verify things for them. So I know they do their homework. I know they're serious people. And when it goes back to my experience, if you look up the show I did John Tino vanish to NDA Island? Okay? Because it appears to me that there was a lot of effort to silence the John Tino story when it first came out. I forget what it was when the whole avalanche of phone calls and people hitting my websites and my old shows hit. It was either when Epstein was arrested or when he died. I forget which one. But I started getting hit by all these tabloid journalists, and they would kind of say, well, what do you think of that John Tino story? And I'd never heard of it. The only time I heard of it was people trying to discredit it. And it appears to me what happened, if you listen to the show, did John Tino disappear to NDA Island, Non-Disclosure Agreement Island? It appears to me that a lot of effort has gone out there to silence this story, and that even after, everyone knows about Catch and Kill. But what you need to know is that even sometimes after a story is published, and this goes on a lot in the modeling business, exposés about modeling agencies and stuff like that, that the book comes out, it tells the real story, but then the authors don't want to discuss it during the interview. Okay, that there's some type of arrangement that takes place afterwards that kills that version of the story. So even though the book is published, it's out there, it's not out there. But you can find it at Opperman Report Patreon, because that's what I do for you. That's why I'm number 3 on Spotify and Apple Plays for exclusive documents, because I don't fool around. So that's up there in the Patreon. You could find that there. Plus, of course, we have the JFK files. We have the Epstein binder, the concept of the binder. We have everything like that up there. There's an interview with Kevin Lenahan. His book is called Storm of Suspicion, the Karen Reed Murder Trial. Really enjoyed that interview with Kevin. Really nice guy. He's a former bar owner from Massachusetts. And he's not really a jaded true crime journalist. But he's into the story. He told from his perspective. And I don't want to be bombarded with people who want to tell me that Kevin's not a legit source and you have a better source. If you do, I'm willing to talk to people who have come to other conclusions on this story. I'm not married to any kind of theory in this story. I have no client in this deal. I'll take all comers. I'll take on all comers. and the Karen Reed story, because I know people are very passionate about that story. I'm sure just mentioning it now, people are typing away, clicking away at their little keyboards. Yeah, Opperman, you don't know. This is the only Karen Reed story you're allowed to talk about. I'm taping this week with the great Barrett Brown. Oh, let me pull up his book, man. He's a good guy. If I can get it quickly here, and I can. My Glorious Defeats, Hacktivist, Narcissist, Anonymous, a Memoir. You got to love a guy who's self-depreciating, And I got to tell you something else. We've probably had more people on this show either calling from prison or calling from exile out of the country. I don't think you can find another host out there that's taken more phone calls from prison. Even just in the past few months, we got Barrett Brown. He's in exile, I believe, in England. And we had Joe Francis, who's in exile in Mexico. And we had Joe Exotic, who's in prison, calling from prison. We had Billy the Prophet, Reverend Pinkney, who shed a lot of light to that case. So, it just goes to show you, what side people are on. The man or the people. But anyway, we got Barrett Brown coming back. I'm hoping to talk to him about a few things, especially the Signal chat scandal, Signal Gate. And I'm going to have some things to say about that tonight myself, my own personal information. We have Trevor Aronson coming back from The Intercept. Great guy. I love Trevor. I got a feeling I've been spelling his name incorrectly in all the previous shows and all the previous interviews I've done with him. I'll have to go back and take a look at that and maybe correct some spelling. I apologize. There's just so much going on here. But he's written an article for The Intercept about how a landlord in a Florida PR firm helped Trump kick off the Tren de Aguero gang panic, Trump's Operation Aurora. Swept up only one suspected gang member, but set the stage for radical expansion of government power. You might remember when that story first came out about Aurora, Colorado, and then the Hells Angels were on their way over there to take on this. I contacted some local tenants' rights activists, and who first were very, happy to speak with me, but then I guess their heads got a bit swollen from all the media attention. And didn't have time for good old Ed Opperman anyway, but that's okay, man. I'm still in favor of getting the truth out about that story. We still got to figure out. I know it came out around the same time as that they were eating the dogs and they were eating the cats over in Springfield. So maybe it was the Venezuelans that were eating the dogs and cats. We hear they're eating zebra over in Venezuela. That crazy story that they were so starving in Venezuela they were going to the zoo and eating the zoo animals. Oh, my God. What a world we live in. Just imagine We had a presidential candidate at a presidential debate stare into the camera and say, "They are eating the dogs. They are eating the cats. They are eating the pets in Springfield." And that guy was elected. Oh, man. Barrett Brown, too. Last time he was on, he was telling us about a fellow named Thiel, Peter Thiel, right? And about this, some guy named, well, I think I wrote it down, J.D. Vance, who was some fellow that was bought and paid for by Mr. Thiel. And I wonder what happened to him, man. J.D. Vance, I think he was running for vice president or something like that. He seems to have disappeared. They sent him down to Greenland today. And then Greenland didn't want to welcome his wife. They said, "We don't want to welcome your wife if you come here to Greenland." Oh, well, my God. We are living, the Chinese say, "May you live in interesting times." We must all be combination platter number 4. Oh, my goodness. Don't forget, every Friday night, you go to Spreaker.com, Spreaker.com. You go there, there's a chat room. It's not really a live show anymore. I tape it before I play it, but it's the same time. I mean, people can't tell it's not live. I'm doing it without interruption. I don't pause or do anything. Like if someone would take shots at me right now, you'd hear it. Okay. But what do you call it? I'm going to work it out that we're going to do it live. Because I have all this renewed energy, man, after these doctor appointments. I'll be giving a little update on that, too. It feels so good, man, for Friday to come and to look forward to doing the show. And to not, run out of energy in the middle of the show and says, "Well, I'll give you more during the week." Just because now I can go over. Today I can go double if I wanted to. I got some other notes from last week I forgot all about. I was going to tell you about the Vatican. And their involvement in so many strange cases, like the DuPont murder there, the Fox Tower, Foxcatcher property there with the wrestlers. One of the assassins who was partners with Bill Menser, he was involved with the Vatican. Epstein, the neighbor was the Vatican. They had the same bulletproof glass one-way windows that the Epstein had. The D.C. Madam, her phone bill. We have, by the way, if you go to Opera Report on Patreon, I have all the D.C. Madams. Her list. You gotta have a list. But it's only Epstein list. It can only be a list, and it has to have an island involved. The D.C. Madam Palfrey, they always forget her first, Deborah Jean Palfrey, whatever it was. She's got a list. Okay? And her lawyer, at great risk to his own profession, man, published that list, great penalties, great suffering. And there's all big companies on there. And that's real. She was really trafficking, not like Epstein was. She was mostly for his own personal enjoyment and for that of his friends. But not this big operation with a real client list. That was Palfrey, the D.C. Madam. We have that list. But what? Because there's no island involved? It's no good. You got to be an island? Well, put some sand on this list and publish this one. God, get me out of here. Anyway, so I had a whole day. I forgot. I just realized right before I started doing today's show that I had that whole thing about the Vatican I wanted to do from leftover from last week's show. But we'll get to it, I promise you. The name of the show tonight is Historic Docs, Signal Chats, and Sugar Daddies. Hopefully we'll get to all those topics. Or maybe I'll just go over and talk a little longer tonight. I don't mind. But the Historic Docs we're working on is stuff. It's a 40-year-old story. That we're getting final official government confirmation. We ran into a little hitch on it right before the broadcast. We may have provided the wrong dates that we're looking for, and possibly even a slightly wrong description of the exact location that we're looking for these historic documents. But it's either going to disprove or prove a big story that a lot of people have been waiting to controversial thing back there that we're going to finally get to the bottom of. Okay. Is that okay with you? Okay, because it's okay with me. Okay. I'm running out of time already. Argentina. Tonight coming up after this, we got two good shows. One is James Renner, and his book is about the Scout Camp, Sex, Death, and Secret Societies Inside the Boy Scouts of America. James Renner is a really good guest, okay? A very interesting guy. The story's fascinating, and it just turns out that this guy is a true crime writer anyway, and he lived this story. He was a camp counselor at this camp where this abuse was going on and these bizarre rituals were going on with both adults and children and all kinds of creepiness. And it dovetails some cases I've worked on that I've discussed, and, I wish we had more success in them, but that I've discussed in the past about these Royal Rangers and their behaviors on their private campgrounds and stuff like that. And it's just so sad, that something you'd think as wholesome as the Boy Scouts or the Royal Rangers, young boys who want to camp and start fires in the woods and fish and hunt, and you get an axe. Ooh, can I have an axe and chop something, Yeah, I grew up in the Bronx. I wanted to be a Boy Scout so bad. There was no Boy Scout troop in the South Bronx, But my parents, they bought me a tent and they bought me a canteen. Man, just so I could make believe I was going to somehow one day camp, And then finally, when I did finally, when we moved to Staten Island, I was out in the woods all the time fishing and riding our bikes and stuff like that. But still never really camped on Staten Island or anything like that. A lot of fishing every day on our bikes. But it wasn't until really I moved to Vegas as an adult and I started hiking out in the wilderness and camping and things like that. I took Vic camping. She did a lot of camping. We used to love that because we used to watch those shows like Survivor and stuff like that. So we'd say, okay, let's just go up to Mount Charleston right now at 8 o'clock in the dark and put the tent up. Like we're on Survivor. We'd regret it, but, we did it. Then coming up, the part 2 tonight after James Renner and Scout Camp, Sex, Death, and Secret Societies Inside the Boy Scouts of America will be Marlon Bressi, very nice guy himself. Pennsylvania's coldest case, 10 unsolved murders that rocked the Keystone State. Now, there's a very interesting story there in these 10 stories. We didn't get to all 10. We just didn't have time. I'll have them come back. But the first one was this bizarre murder that took place back in, I think it's the 30s. He's into old cold case stuff that, for me, is just frustrating to try and work on something that old. Or if you got a name that's too common, you got to work on it. And as a professional investigator, that kind of stuff, you get a name like Alvarez, or Goldstein, and you got to find this guy, and you barely got any. You don't have a date of birth. You just want to give up. Can't pay enough to take this job. But Martin Bressi, a great guest. Pennsylvania's coldest case. One of the first stories we talk about is this fellow who was murdered, and they cut like occult symbols into his forehead. They cut his eyeball out. They did a sigil around his chest, his heart. And it was such a bizarre investigation. The chief of police actually bought his bloody car. Okay. And I guess he cleaned it up or whatever. Was driving around in the victim's car before the case was even solved. Just so bizarre, What was going on there? So Martin Bressi, he's coming up tonight. Pennsylvania's coldest case, 10 unsolved murders that rocked the Keystone State, and also James Renner, Scout Camp, Sex, Death, and Secret Societies Inside the Boy Scouts. Okay. I don't want to bore everybody with all my medical updates, but I get a lot of questions about it, so I do want to address it. I just got a call today. I went and got some x-rays yesterday and some sonograms yesterday. Now, when the woman was doing the sonograms of my kidney and my liver, they're not allowed to tell you. But I got a good vibe off of her, and she kind of gave me a wink that nothing to be too concerned about with my kidney and liver, okay? And then also, too, I did some chest x-rays. And they actually called me back and gave me the results and says, hey, man, your chest x-rays are fine. Well, I'm taking these meds. Only been taking them for about 21 days, so I don't know, man. Maybe it's done that much improvement in such a short time. I feel so much better. I have not had this energy and this strength, guys, in like 5 years. And if you had any idea, there would be nights I was up all night sitting up in a chair. If I lied down, I couldn't breathe, you know. So thank God, you know, we're getting ahead. I'm not dying, guys. Like we always dying, but I'm not gonna die so far. I'm never gonna die. Not even by. I'm gonna run out in front of a bus tonight. How's that? Okay, but I got a call about the X-rays, and it's such a shame because there's so much confusion. You know, the way they have the medical healthcare system set up now, first you see a primary care physician, then he sends you to a cardiologist, a kidney guy, a therapist, an orthopedist, and all this other stuff, you know. Whereas I've heard in other countries, I forget if it was China or Cuba or something like that, when you go into the hospital, the doctors all come in, like 4 doctors with 4 different specialties all come in, and they all talk at the same time. They have different questions, then they consult with each other, and they come up with a plan. Where here, you go see the one guy, he sends you to 10 different places, and they, you know, well, your insurance doesn't, we don't take your insurance, you got to go to this other guy instead. Like all this mass confusion. And, you know, with the X-rays, I already had X-rays done, and now they want me to get another set of X-rays for another guy. I says, well, what about the other X-rays I got? I'll just go pick those up and give them to you. Okay? So I'm actually, you know, they say, oh, well, if he's on the patient portal, you know, he'll get them. I says, oh, let me just drive over and pick them up. Okay? And I'll give it to this guy by hand. Which reminds me of a funny story. Back in 1985, I got into a fist fight with my girlfriend's ex-husband. And he deserved it. Okay? He deserved it. Now, that was my first arrest I ever got. It was a Class E felony battery. Okay? Which is serious. Which means, and the reason why it was a Class E felony rather than just a misdemeanor battery was because he claimed that I broke his jaw and that he had a broken jaw. So what I did was, this is back in 1985, I went down to the hospital and I had no ID, no nothing. I pretended I was him and I got a copy of his X-rays, okay? And then I took him straight over to my lawyer's office. And back in those days, I didn't need an appointment. I walked right in. He was a big lawyer too. What do you call it? And I'm in there with the X-rays. And I said, well, how'd you get these X-rays? Well, I just walked down there. Yeah, I got them, you know. And we're holding up the X-rays to the window, trying to figure out the light coming through the window to figure out if we see any kind of break on it. We don't see any break. Fracture, nothing. So he goes, all right, I got a doctor who's a friend of mine from the Italian club. When we're going to go see him. Okay, so now I'm thinking we're going to make an appointment. No, right after 6 o'clock. Me and my lawyer drive over to this doctor's office. We're the only ones in there. He's got the office shut down, and he's looking at it, and he's this old Italian doctor with this thick accent. I would love to tell you his name. But the most Italian name you could ever imagine in your life. There used to be a TV show called Abbott and Costello. And Abbott and Costello had a friend in their neighborhood named Bacicaloop. Okay, and the Bacicaloop, you know, they would go in there, they'd want to order meatballs, and Bacicaloop would have a fit. Meatball, what a meatball! And you'd have a big fit, and you know, a whole Abbott and Costello type of bit. And then later on, when they started doing the movies, and Abbott and Costello joined the army, hey, look, there's Bacicaloop. He joined the army too. It's Bacicaloop. So whenever I would have an Italian friend or employee, I would call him Bacicaloop, mostly behind their back, but sometimes right to their face. Hey, Bacicaloop, come on in. So anyways, it is Doctor here. We'll call him Bacicaloop. We go into his office there after hours, you know, we're sneaking in there like with these stolen X-rays. And he's looking at it. Mamma mia, I don't see no breaking here. But I don't know. He wasn't really like that kind of doctor anyway, but still. So then, you know, my lawyer, I watched him. You know, we got right on the phone with the DA. Says, look, man, you know, there was a word, there is still a word you use for evidence that comes in over the transom. I forget what it's called. It's a slang word for it, and it was mostly used back in New York in those days. But I've heard it used on court TV, and you know, that you got this evidence, but you really can't say how you got it. You know, it's hey, you know, I got this fugazi evidence here, but there's no, you know, and I already had a guy look at it. There's no fracture on this guy's jaw. He's lying. And so whatever doctor he had lied. You know, we're going to cover up our own doctor. There's no fracture on him. And so that's how we were able to negotiate that case. And all those cases back in those days, I walked out scot-free on everything. Every time I was guilty, I walked out free. It was the only time I was innocent that I got in trouble. But anyway, that's my situation with the X-rays. And man, I agreed. I came out a couple of weeks back, or about a month back, and I agreed that I announced they had agreed to write a book about Epstein and my experience with the Epstein cases, and especially some of my. I thought I was dying, so I was going to name names, blow whistles, and not give a damn. Okay. And now, I kind of have to hold back a bit. But one thing I realized is when I was working on the Epstein stuff, especially Virgin Islands, okay, there was just so much corruption, and there was just so much. I never compromised, my ethics and my integrity, okay, and none of the attorneys that I normally work with did either. But I came into contact with a lot of attorneys and prosecutors and stuff and there was a lot of corruption, and I realized, really, practically today or yesterday, I think I came up with this, that had I continued down that road, I would have been compromised. And I would have been so corrupted and so compromised that I'd be working for the other side. And what I want to tell you is that a lot of people you see out there with these huge followings regarding Epstein, and you wonder how they get them, especially when they have no connection at all to this case. And I believe they're working for the other side, either knowingly or unknowingly. Because there's so many people just in this business that are just too stupid and too naive to have any business talking about any of these topics. They just don't have the personal life experience to know what they're talking about. And they think that by Googling and getting this information from Google and reading articles and reading books, that somehow that puts them in the mix and gives them the savvy and the personal life experience to talk about these things when they don't, And it makes me think that either some of them I know are knowingly on the other side, and some I just think are just stupid. And then I think that some should know better, and they're making compromises in things that they say. So that's where I am with that. Which kind of brings me, see how we're doing on time. Might have a 2-hour show for you today, because I think we're doing half hour into the show. This whole crazy thing about the Signal chat with Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard was on there, there's so much there, man. But the thing that strikes me is how so many of these MAGA fans, or the MAGA Twitter people, that MAGA Twitter army, that's clearly funded, at this point. My Twitter feed is 99% MAGA support that I don't even follow. Now I'm going through one by one, muting all these people, man, and it's just constant propaganda on there. But now my thinking is, okay, even if you're on the Trump team, right? And you find out that people that are on your team are having unsecured communications. There's no excuse for trying to downplay that or make excuses or do backflips and justifying it, and the plan succeeded anyway. This is a huge breach of security. And one of the guys on the call was in Russia. Now, from my understanding, first of all, you can't even download Signal as a communication app on a government phone. Okay, so these guys had been using their personal phones. Okay, and I got that from somebody on the inside. Also, too, that one of these people was in Russia, and when you're in Russia on your personal phone, they're monitoring everything going on your phone. So, look, I don't know that much about the Houthis. Okay, I know one of those Houthis, they bombed his girlfriend's entire building to kill this one Houthi guy. And, God knows how many civilian casualties there are there. And if he had advanced knowledge, he could have dipped out and they would have killed a whole building full of people for no reason. And I just think it was just a matter of incompetence and timing that this intelligence didn't get back to the Houthis in a quick enough time before the assaults and the planes took off. But the Houthis are capable of shooting down airplanes, and so are the Iranians, And the Russians are certainly capable of monitoring Signal. It just came out, some retired CIA were on the news saying, hey, we just got a bulletin in the past few months saying that the Signal is a compromised app, and that's adversaries of the United States government. So now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I support the U.S. war machine and all of that. What I'm saying is if I was a MAGA guy and my own MAGA guys are using insecure communications that involves me, I'd be super pissed. Okay? Like, you have no idea. Like, that would be like, okay, when Dave McGowan, when he was alive, if I was sharing information with Dave McGowan, private information, and then I found out that he was just blabbing it all over town to people with no credentials, with no that I don't approve of. Okay? That would be the deal breaker. Okay? And not that Dave would ever do that. He was a pretty savvy guy. I had a PI case once where the client, back in those days, I had such balls, man. I don't even know how God knows, man. Okay, but I was doing some stuff back in those days, man. Not illegal, but I was working on cases that involved, like big congressional investigations and U.S. Secret Service and all kinds of stuff, man. My house was getting broken into, and there was a certain situation in one of those type of cases where suddenly, without consulting me, the client fired their attorney and hired a new attorney that had political motivations that were opposite to my own, personally at least. I became very concerned. And then they started demanding material and reports and disks and hard drives and thumb drives and things like that to be sent to them. They wanted me to email them and tell them tracking numbers over the phone. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, let's just call them up and tell them, we've got adversaries here, okay? We want to kind of keep that private, and have it come as a surprise. And I'm going to drive to another town, trust me, and get a FedEx box over there and ship it from over there. I'm going to make some effort with a phony return. And I'm going to make some effort to get this to you without it being opened up. And you can go to my Facebook and see my mail being torn open back in those days. Even a package that was sent to me by John Potash was ripped open. One of the FedEx envelopes that was sent to me had a little hole in it popped in there that you could stick a little pinhole camera in there and look around and see what's inside. This was clear and obvious right in front of our faces that we were under surveillance. And here now you're changing attorneys without consulting me, and now you're asking for tracking numbers, and why not just sign a confession, and go in and move our offices into their offices, you know what I mean? So I resigned that case. I withdrew from the case. You know what? I want no part of this. All right, because it's crazy. It's stupid. And just like, I had a couple of incidents in the past week. Very nice fellow, he's been on the show, nice guy. I enjoyed the interview with him. I think we did 2 interviews, as a matter of fact. And, I get some word, the guy's talking crap about me, man. I says, hey, man, what's going on? You're talking, and then I look him up and I see he's dealing with all these people that I know are shady as you can be, shady AF, you know that expression, okay? With connections to NSA, with connections to COINTELPRO, connections to all kind of operations. As a matter of fact, right now there's a whole controversy with this whole little bunch that came after me with their bots and their farms and their QAnon friends and stuff like that. Now they're all going after each other. The same guys coming that were working, that had an op on me. Now they're all eating each other alive. Okay, and I hear things come back to me. So I contact this guy and I say, hey, man, you know, I hear you talking stuff about me, you know. And now I Google you and I see you're dealing with all these folks here, and then they got this, they got that. You know, maybe we should go our separate ways, you know, because you're communicating with people I don't trust. And that doesn't mean I hate you. It doesn't even mean that I think you're on the wrong team. You may have well intentions, but you're riding in a car with a bunch of guys trying to kill me. Okay, you may not realize it. Okay, you may not know what you're doing, and I have no time to teach you what you're doing. So you go your way, and I'll go. We're like friends. We go different. What we didn't. There was a time we didn't know each other. Before that, I got along great. You got along great. What's the big deal? Like, people think when I block them, you know, or I discontinue or association with somebody, it's because I hate them or I'm mad or they said something to hurt my feelings. You know, that's not it, man. You know, this is adult. This is serious stuff. Okay, what I'm doing is serious stuff. I don't know what you're doing. Not this particular guy, but I don't know what these other guys are out there doing with their podcasts and their YouTubes, talking, you know, making wild allegations against everybody all over the place with no Agenda 21. You know, half of that nonsense. You know, I'm serious business, man. You know, and I got to deal with consequences for what I do. So I got to pick and choose who's I'm going to trust, who's going to be in my circle. One of these. What? How about this? Got some notes here. Okay. But, you know, with this situation, you know, with Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard, you know, if there's egregious lapse of security, wouldn't you want to fix those defects rather than making up cover stories and lying about it? Wouldn't you want to say, hey, man, we made a mistake. It was a big stupid thing we just did. Hey, going forward, we better prepare ourselves and do the right thing and take these steps to secure our communications. All right? And I'll give you an example. I was very close to a certain fellow. Okay? He was a guest on his show. The guy passes away. Suddenly I find out that there's someone else. Oh, I don't know. I've never heard of this person before. I have no idea who they are, what they are. And my friend never mentioned them to me, not even once, even as a hint. Okay? And suddenly this person has control of their social media accounts. This person can read all my private communications with that person who was someone I trusted, that I spoke to privately. Now, someone else I don't know has access. What the hell is that? How can anyone in their right mind think that that's okay? How can you think that's if I die, man, you know, out there, man, and you know me, block everything, block me, delete every conversation we've ever had, because God only knows who's going to get a hold of my stuff, man. You know, I can't take those chances unless you know it's planned out. And I tell you, you know, so and so's taking over my communication. There's certain people I trust, you know, but otherwise, you can't just. Like, what the hell is that? You know? And another guy I trusted, he's involved in this most recent controversy, too. A fellow used to work for QAnon, for Code Monkey and Watkins and stuff down in the Philippines. And I shared with him some information privately and about Colonel Aquino, and he blasted it all over the internet. You know, and I forgave him. And then I find out he's part of this whole operation to make a nuisance for me. So when your instincts are right, okay, when you know the first time you can't trust somebody, man, you can't trust them, and you got to take steps to protect yourself and your family, your loved ones, and people who trust me. The reason people come to me with information, why I can give you these exclusive docs and this exclusive stuff, is because people know they can trust me. I'm not out blabbing and gossiping and speaking on unsecured communications, you know, or even as Barrett Brown says, man, I said to him one time, this guy's an expert in this kind of stuff. And I said, well, how do you secure your communications? Said, well, you can't. So what you do is you don't commit any crimes. You don't do anything they can use against you. You know, and that's my philosophy too as well. You know, you can't commit any crimes because they'll use it against you. Which brings me to another little situation. Speaking again about blocking people. I posted this thing about Bernie and AOC. And I says, boy, look at this, man. In 2015, they told us that we couldn't run Bernie because the American public was too stupid to understand what a democratic socialist was. We could never explain socialism to them in such a quick time. But here we are now in such a short time, and we clearly understand what Nazism is and what fascism is. We see it growing right before our very eyes. We see Elon Musk with his Nazi salutes. I didn't mention Musk. But I just mentioned how we're seeing fascism, right, and authoritarianism and the dismantling of democracy right before our eyes. Trump saying, well, I'm not going to listen to judges. Oh, the whole Supreme Court is owned and blackmailed by Trump. The whole Congress is owned and blackmailed by Trump. And a former guest I've had on this phone, on the show, so, someone who I liked, okay, I wanted to help, I wanted to support. Had some, flaky stuff, going on that I didn't agree with, okay, but I never made an issue of it. And she comes back to me. And I said, we understand what Nazis and fascists are. And she comes back to me and says, Ed, the Nazis killed people while Elon Musk is only trying to root out corruption using Doge. How could you compare the two? Now, I had never mentioned Musk, but somehow this person... okay, knew I was talking. When I mentioned Nazis, right away I thought of Musk. Maybe it was the Nazi salute. Maybe it was him supporting these far-right candidates in Germany. Maybe it was his retweeting saying that Hitler didn't really kill millions of people. Maybe that's why she thought I was talking about Musk and Nazism. Well, let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. I got into my first fight with a Nazi when I was in 1976. I was about 14 years old. That's the first time I shed blood fighting a Nazi in the streets of New York City. Those Nazi skinheads and neo-Nazis, okay? That's the first time I shed blood fighting a Nazi. I was a kid. I was 14 years old. This was a grown man, okay? I lost that fight, okay? And we overall, our group beat their group, but I lost my end, okay? But I don't regret it, okay? I'll fight Nazis, okay? I'll fight Nazis today. And by the way, I'm coming back. My fighting my fighting is coming back, guys. All right, I'm kind of excited about that. So, okay, fine. And I said, look, man, let's just agree to disagree, okay? And respect my reporting. I didn't even get into the whole thing about Musk, and I says, Musk. You brought up Musk, and then I block her. I said, look, I gave you a chance. She was insulting to me about my reporting, about my competency and what I'm doing here. Okay, I've been doing this a long time. Respected professional, man. Give me a break, man. I'll be getting to some more of that in a minute. And I says, look, let's just agree to disagree, okay? I don't want to have to, or we can just go our separate ways. And she couldn't control herself and got insulting with me, so I blocked her. And then she turns around and writes on her page, oh, Ed Opperman was comparing Elon Musk to Nazis. I never mentioned that. She brought that up. And I would have forgiven that. And then he blocked me. And I would have forgiven that, except he said these other things about my health and I never said anything. That's just a complete fantasy. I never said that. If I did, it's out of context. Trust me, okay? I never brought up Musk and Nazis. She did. Listen, if we disagree about something, okay, fine. But why is it you have to make something up, man? If you're mad about me about something, be mad about that thing. Don't make something up. Why? I don't know, man. For me, it would be an insult to myself. I couldn't look myself in the mirror if I was making a false accusation about somebody. I couldn't live with myself. I don't know how that works. Let's see how we're doing on time. Because that reminds me of a situation, too. There was a U.S. attorney named Mrs. Aber, who died mysteriously. At first, well, she died. She's a young woman, 43 years old. She was a prosecutor, Department of Justice attorney, prosecutor. And the meme out there was, and she devoted her career to investigating child sex exploitation cases, and now suddenly she's mysteriously dead. Took 2 seconds to look up and see her resignation letter on the Department of Justice website. She only worked on child exploitation cases from 2015 to 2016, 1 year, 10 years ago. That wasn't her specialty. As a matter of fact, her biggest case this lovely woman ever worked on had to do with catalytic converters and a scheme to steal and resell catalytic converters. That was her claim to fame. And it just came out this week. The cause and manner of death was epilepsy. And her own family said, hey, it has nothing to do with this bizarre. There's enough things we can report on out there that are true, that we don't need to sensationalize all this other stuff. There's enough that's real. There's enough that's true that we could stick to, which I would encourage my fellow people out there to do. Oh, boy, I got so many notes, man. Oh, by the way, all this Tesla vandalism, right? I found out that there's in Vegas, the Tesla deal, because there's a big Tesla, I think it's a factory out there. Vegas is a big hub for Tesla cars. And they're hiding, to avoid vandalism to their Tesla trucks, they're hiding them on the roof parking garage at the Westgate Hotel, which is a very secure area because it's right next to the convention center. And you need, nowadays, in order to get into the convention center, you need buku ID to get in there, man. It's not like it was in the old days where me and my buddies would go and sneak into all the conventions down. And when I first moved to Vegas, you could all you had to do was just buy a lanyard and a little plastic thing and have it, and find out what color they were using that day. Just have it turned around, And then as you were walking in, you would ask the guy at the door there, hey, which way is the bathroom? And he'd point you to the bathroom. You'd walk right past him. It was so easy to get in, but they cracked down on that after 9/11 and terrorism and planes going into the building, because that's that's a target, and that's where they're hiding these Tesla vehicles on the roof there of the Westgate Hotel over there, which is right by the convention center. Let's see what's going on here. I wouldn't mind if the show was over. I'm getting tired. I got 50 minutes. I got 10 minutes to go. I got stuff to tell you about Kash Patel, and I got weird stuff to tell you about Mike Johnson, who Mike Johnson put on his financial disclosure form that he has 0 assets. Okay, and this is the Speaker of the House. And in D.C., he's living in a 2-bedroom basement of this pastor, this bizarre pastor, who actually filmed videos of himself with prostitutes in order to teach his wife how to have sex with him. That's the story out there. Because what came out, we heard this week that Mike Johnson, there was a rumor or a theory that they caught him on Grindr, which is a gay dating app, which, by the way, was owned by the Chinese too, just like TikTok, okay? And they had to sell off their assets to another company, but the guy who's the original Chinese, he's still the CEO of the company. It just is, he only owns 1% now, so it's okay. So that's a whole nother honeypot, black nothing. By the way, Laura Loomis, speaking of honeypot, Laura Loomis out there just announced her own opposition research company. And she's, by the way, I agree with Laura Loomis about what she's saying about this Signal Gate, man. She's 100% right. If your own people, man, or it's, because she knows she knows what's going on with this kind of stuff. Trust me. But then, that's a good example. We can get into all of that. Do we want to do that? I don't know if I want to. Because where did she come from? How did she come up and be elevated to such an extent that she is? Kash Patel, I want to talk about him too, and his weird marriage, his secret marriage, and his secret divorce. And by the way, Kash Patel's ex-wife is partners in a restaurant with Pete Hegseth. wife in New York City. So you got to imagine what the conflict there is between those two. You know, there can't be good blood there because there's issues between Kash Patel and the $2 million settlement he gave his. We call it his ex-wife, but there's no record of a marriage. It's supposed to be some kind of secret Hindu ceremony or something, Hindu Sikh, whatever he is. Don't look at me. But Kash Patel is living in a place in Vegas that's owned by this timeshare scam artist. And it wasn't just that he's living with this guy, but he travels with the guy. It's like a sugar daddy, you know? And just like Johnson, Speaker Johnson, is living in this 2-bedroom basement apartment with this creepy, you know, there's a lot of creepy sexual stuff going around there where Mike Johnson says that he and his son have this app on their phone where they monitor each other watching pornography and, you know, hold each other accountable. How can you be so obsessed with pornography that you need to have an app? I wouldn't even know how to find this app. And then that you need a friend or a pal to... your porno buddy to keep track with you, man. What's going on there? But the thing is, he's living in his basement. The guy's Speaker of the House, man, with no assets. And he's living in the basement of this pastor, this weirdo pastor guy. And I looked up the property address. Anybody can look it up because it just takes a little bit of, it's all public domain. I looked it up. And you look at like windows for that basement. I don't see any. Okay? It seems to be a windowless 2-bedroom basement that the Speaker of the House is being kept in a basement. I don't know, man. And even George Santos says, you know, I found a nice apartment. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. I found it for about $3,000. It was $3 from the Capitol. Okay? You know, George Santos was able to find a place with windows above the ground. You know, look at him, how weird he is. Let me get a couple of things here because there's one last thing I want to tell you about. We're doing good. Years ago, I took this young man under my wing, and it's funny because when Vic was even in high school and in college, you know, she would because she was the captain of the debate team, and then she was the president of the debate team, and she trained the team she led went on to nationals, or they won nationals, and the team she trained below her after her, they won nationals. So and she would, you know, tell me she was a mentor to these younger students. And she would come to me. She goes, Dad, you know, my mentee, you know, she's not calling me. I'm worried about my mentee. I never even heard the word mentee before. I never heard of mentor, you know, but I never heard the word mentee. So about 10 years ago, I took this fellow under my wing and became his mentor and his, they call it a rabbi. In New York, they call him a rabbi, you know, teacher, you know. And I introduced him to a lot of people and got a lot of good work, you know, with the right folks, okay, in his career. And just recently, I get word that he just hit the jackpot, man, as far as career advancement. And I was going to say to him, you know what, man, first of all, I'm so proud of you. And you should go back to those people I introduced to you back in Vegas, and you should tell them, you know, what you're doing now, so that they'll feel encouraged and they'll be supportive of you in your efforts because they're all on the same goal, so they're all on the same path. And then I thought, dude, this guy has so far surpassed all those people that he was interning for and working for and doing those little scut jobs for. He's so surpassed them that now they would have to go to him for access and for advancement. He's pulling the strings now over these guys I had him intern for years and years and years ago and do that miserable scut work, you know. And this brings me to a position where I'm about to be in a position, okay, due to efforts that I put in 10 years ago. And I made a comment about that today on Facebook and Twitter that, you know, that today I'm benefiting from work I did 10 years ago. And had I not done and put that effort in and that work in 10 years ago, I would not have that today. But today I'm at a position where I will have access to some of the most powerful people in Congress. And that information I have that I've done, there were times in the past, and I would talk about it when there would be like a hearing about the SDNY and Trump and all that stuff. And I'd say, oh man, if I could just get these questions to the people on the committee, on the hearing, if I could just get this. Now I can. Okay, now I can. So this is like a huge, and for it to come like this, 3 weeks after, I couldn't even lie down and couldn't even. I would cut the show short because I couldn't breathe. If you listen to the shows from the past year and a half, even the intro, I would run out of breath after the intro. Well, I'd say, welcome to the opera and all that stuff like that. I'd be out of breath then, man. So just having all this new energy, man, and this new lease on life and this new optimism, man, I can't tell you how good I feel. And just how proud I am of this kid, man, that I started off in his career and now I can go to him for favors. Like that. God bless, man. Great stuff out there, I want to tell you. I got notes. Maybe this week I'll do an extra show and I'll put up, because I still want to talk to you about my whole marijuana career and stuff, the nightclub career and other businesses I invested in too. Like I invested in an X-ray company back when I was a kid. I was part of an advertising agency. I had a business. I was a landlord. I had a lot of interesting nightclub. I had a lot of interesting career in my life. That gave me a lot of experience. And, it's so funny because people who know me, who think they know me through the show, just, wow, Ed's always been broke. He's always been broke. It's not true at all. And that's why he's a socialist, because, he's always looking, he's a failed PI. He's a, failed business. Not really. The only problem I ever had was my divorce. And then we had to come up with all that money. And after being, kicked out of my house and my office, and my phone and my Rolodex and my shoes. There's a video of me in court. It's all sealed now. But there's a video of me in court saying, Your Honor, I can't go back and get my shoes. And she says, well, you look fine now. I says, you have your shoes. He has his shoes. She has her shoes. I can't have my own shoes. And but one day we'll get into all of that too. I only got 3/2 my notes. So now what we're going to do here is tonight we have to end the show because we're running late. I'm kind of getting screwed over with some of these hospital bills. Okay, I'm not going to pay them. I'm going to fight them off. And it's funny. Vic used to say, whenever we came across a problem, she goes, "Oh, Dad, come on! You're going to get on the phone. You're going to yell and scream at people, and you're going to find out who to report them to, and it's all going to be resolved." I got exhausted living my life that way, and it's true. Give me a fight, and I'll fight. I'll win. Okay, do I want to fight over this $900 medical expenses? I'd rather not. So if you could chip in with the Patreon, I got a lot of new stuff in Patreon. Got new stuff coming up this week. Got Trevor Aronson taping this week. I'm taping with Barrett Brown. A couple of guys you really don't hear anywhere else. Okay, I got a couple other guys, a couple of JFK types. I'm working on too as well. Hey, what is that one there? There's one about working on it right now, as a matter of fact. People can't get their job straight. Who Killed Mary Pynchon Meyer, JFK's mistress? A new book coming out that I'm going to have the author on before the ink is dry. You have no idea how how in demand the show is by authors and publishers to get their guests on this show, man. They want them on here first. Because they know how many books we sell. We are overtime, so I'm going to give the goodbye song, and I had a story about it. I picked this song. Our good friend Shane McKay from Ireland brought me a Neil Young song this week, and he says, "Hey Ed, man, can you play this?" And I says, and it was Southern Man, but I like this other song. Old Man, Take a Look at My Life. I'm a lot like you, and I'm going to tell you a quick story. Okay. because that song really, I don't know, maybe because my relationship with my father or what, I don't know. But I love that song. And I remember there was this one day I woke up and I started the day off with a bottle of Pinot Grigio white wine and some leftover tortellini Alfredo. It was my breakfast. And as the day went on, you know, I had a little more wine, a little champagne, a couple of beers, a little bit of scotch, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Who knows what else? And I came up with this idea. By evening time, I was, raring to go. Okay. And I came up with this idea that I wanted to get I had it was New York City, so, a lot of prohibition over firearms in New York City. So I had a lot of pellet guns and BB guns and stuff like that. So my plan was to go upstairs to my loft where my pool table was and put up all these beer bottles and stuff like that and plink away at them with my pellet gun. And I call up my maid, my housekeeper, and I says, "Hey man, I can't find my pellet rifle. I can't find my my pellet guns. Where are they?" And she goes, "Ed." I must have been wasted. "Ed, why do you need your guns?" "Ed, tell me, Ed, why do you need your guns, Ed, at 9 o'clock at 9:30 at night in your house when you sound this drunk? Ed, why?" And I tell her, "I'm going on patrol." "Where's my guns? I'm the boss here. Give me my guns." "Ed, I'm not telling you where your guns are. They're your pellet guns." So I came up with this idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the music up really loud and turn the TV on really loud, and I'm going to use my 22 short. I had a pistol, 22 pistol. It was a Beretta. It was called the Beretta 22 Minx. Look it up. It was a nice little gun there. And it came with, I had a holster that was like a wallet with a hole for the trigger so you could shoot it through the wallet. But it jammed up a lot. Even though it was a Beretta, a very expensive gun, it used to jam up a lot. So I could only count on one shot off of that thing. So my plan was to turn the music up, and I'm going to use a 22 short. It's not that loud, right? So I'm going to start shooting this thing off in my condo. It wouldn't penetrate these walls. Plus, I'm friends with my neighbors. They wouldn't get too upset. Back in those days, man, no one challenged anything I said or did. Like today, everybody is second guessing the Opperman, great Opperman. So anyways, I'm playing this song here by Neil Young, which brings back a lot of memories from me, and I had a little funny story behind it too. So listen, my friends, if you want to help out, Patreon, we got the end of the month. We're about to hit the end of the month. I need that Patreon check if you can help out and sign up for a year. Maybe I can put some stuff in that $50 section and the $20 section to draw your attention to it. I can tape this weekend and throw some stuff up there for you, some exclusive stuff. I got so many stories to tell. I'm getting hit with a lot of medical expenses, that are beyond this stupid deductible. I don't even understand how that deductible thing works. And a couple of these people seem to be double charging me for x-rays. So, if you could support us there at Opperman Report Patreon, that's the best way. If you want to send a donation, that's fine too. Otherwise, we're working on a big project too. We'll talk about it in the future. All right, guys. Good night. I love it. Coming up after this will be this fascinating show. I really enjoyed this interview here called, I have it memorized. So James Renner, Scout Camp, Sex, Death, and Secret Societies Inside the Boy Scouts of America. And James Renner wrote another book, too, that was much more popular than this. I'm going to have him come back at that. Great guest, these great narrative storytellers. So this book here, Scout Camp, keep an eye out for that. I love you, my friends, okay? And I'm not going to die, so you get stuck with me, okay? Good night.
Old man, look at my life. I'm a lot like you. Old man, look at my look at my life, 24 and there's so much more. Live alone in a paradise that makes me think of two. Love lost, such a cost. Give me things that don't get lost, like a coin that won't get tossed, rolling home to you. Oh man, take a look at my life, I'm a lot like you. I need someone to love me the whole day through. One look in my eyes and you can tell that's true. Lullabies, look in your eyes, run around the same old town. Doesn't mean that much to me, to mean that much to you. I've been first and last, look at how the time goes past, but I'm all alone.